not everyone always wants to hear me or, I mean, sometimes Josh.
Nobody
Apparently
really
my friends like Josh more than me sometimes. I've already heard that multiple
I
times.
don't think anybody actually wants to hear you.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'm just kidding.
We said you're cool
I'm
earlier.
reminded of that often. Yeah, even my
I don't know
audio
why
guy's
I
like,
said
yeah, he
that.
just mutes me, so he doesn't know what I'm saying.
You mute him every time he starts to talk.
Just not wanting to hear. Welcome to The Friend of Sinners. I'm Andrew, your host, and today we've got our friend Chrissie here as our guest over for today. And so we just want to dig into today's episode. First, I just want to introduce you to Chrissie. Can you tell me just any quick fact about yourself? Or
Sure. So, a quick fact?
yeah, just anything.
I like to sing.
Tell us about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I moved here about 8 years ago, and I was an intervention specialist behaviorally, K through 12. Although I feel like I deal with adults more than kids a lot of times now. No, really,
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but I feel like I really do. So I'm still an intervention specialist licensed, but I am blessed enough to run a ministry at my church, which is a coffee bar that we don't keep any profit for. We're open 7 days a week to the public, and that's kind of cool to be able to go out into the community and contribute. I actually used to pray that I would be able to do ministry instead of actually work one day, and so it's funny years later to see stuff like that come to fruition. It's kind of cool.
So you said you studied for K through 12, right? That was what you said?
I was an intervention specialist behaviorally.
Okay.
So K through 12, like I had my own classroom. I actually had my own unit in the district because I was the only severe behavior specialist in the county that I was in. So I would get kids from other schools bused to me, middle school, high school primarily.
And that means like if there was conflict, then you mediate it?
There was a lot of that, but I actually had all of my students were labeled. I hate the labels in general, but they were labeled in some sort of way with severe behavior problems or emotional disorders.
Isn't that like everyone?
Every human that I know.
Yeah, every human being has a severe issue, I feel like.
So explain that, what you would do a little more.
So I taught every subject.
Okay.
And I would get whatever kids were really far behind, and typically they were far behind because of their behavior, and typically their behavior was poor because of where they came from. So it was like a home repeated pattern kind of thing. Or I had kids that had been through severe trauma. For example, I had a student once who watched her best friend get stabbed to death. She was in California in the front yard when she was like 8, and so she just couldn't sleep at night. And when you can't sleep at night, you can't do homework efficiently. So then you're behind. Teachers, when they're funneling through 180 kids a day, just think you don't want to do your work and they think you're a problem.
Right.
There's a lot of teachers, when they're funneling through 180 kids, don't have the time, I'm trying to say this in the nicest, most correct way I can, to focus on why you are the way they are. You are. You know what I mean? So then you kind of get shoved out, and then that's where I would come in. I gotta tell you, they were amazing. You know, I'd have teachers call me sometimes to say, "Oh, wait till you get this kid," and I'd say, "I don't even want to hear what you have to say." Why? Like, why plant seeds of doubt in a child? Just let me meet him and get to know him, you know? And I say him because 90% of my students were boys. But I did have some girls along the way.
And you did that how long?
I did it for about 15 years. And then I did it after I left it. I did it on and off. Not as a full-time, but like as a sub, specifically in the district, just in those classrooms, because no one wants to take those classrooms as a sub. I left those so that I could be at home more when I had my first kid.
How many kids do you have?
Oh, okay.
2.
Let's go with that.
2? Where are you from?
I'm from Cleveland.
Okay.
She said that.
Oh, she did already?
Yeah.
I did. That's okay, though.
Aren't
How
you
long
from
have you been
Ohio
here?
too?
I am.
8.5 years. I did say that too.
You did?
I
wasn't paying attention. I wasn't listening.
would've been in my
2
class.
kids? How old are they?
You should have been
This
in
is
her
a
class.
perfect scenario.
Yeah.
You sat me right
This is
next to him.
You're still at work right now. You didn't know you were here for your
Is this
job.
why you're trying to see if like
It's a
I can
test.
intervene
It is.
with him?
This is an
Okay.
intervention.
I'll try.
Intervention, right? What made you want to deal with that? Like, I mean, did you want to grow up wanting to do that, or are you just kind of like, I kind of understand people or what?
Honestly, I think people have asked me this question so many times. I come from a family of roughnecks. It is what it is. Like, I was used to it. That harsh exterior, sarcastic, I don't want to listen to you, on both sides of my family. All my I will tell you this. If this puts it into perspective, I am one of the only cousins in my family that doesn't have a felony. Or have ever been arrested. I've actually never even been in a fight. Everyone else in my family, I mean, I have 3 recovered heroin addicts, and that's a blessing. That's amazing. My cousin actually runs a huge treatment facility in Cleveland for addiction. She was a heroin addict, and she's been clean for 15 years. And so I just, a lot of, there's so much God in AA meetings and NA meetings, because the most beautiful moments you have are when people are on their knees and they have nowhere else to look. You know, and God is like right there waiting for them to just ask, you know what I mean? And that is a beautiful thing. And I feel like I have to watch what I say somewhat. So can I be candid?
Yeah,
Okay.
hope so.
Yeah.
So I will stand by the fact that throughout my life I've seen more God in that room than sometimes in church on a Sunday.
Whoa.
Sure.
Real talk there.
So when did you become a believer? When did you become a Christian?
So this is funny because I was talking about this with Andrew. I've been asked to share my testimony, and that took me a long time to figure out what that was, because I have, ever since I could remember, I've always believed in God and Jesus. I don't know why. I've always felt that presence. Even as a kid, if I was lonely or awkward or whatever, just playing in the yard, doing whatever, it's like I knew the presence was there. I've always been able to pray. That I got from the grandmother on my Lebanese side of the family. But I didn't come from like a very faithful family. I'm the only one. So I did not ever have an aha come to Christ moment. I have always been a Christian, but I didn't know what I was doing. I'll say that.
Did
Like,
you go to church?
I did because I was forced to. I was raised in a Catholic church. I got, no offense in any route, that did not work for me, Catholic church. It didn't. I felt scared of God the whole time in church. Like, at least the church that I came from, I felt like we were taught we were burning in hell for everything we did. And in all honesty, as a woman, at that time in Catholic church, there was nothing you could do unless you just wanted to sing. And so I remember as a child asking if I am like a servant at heart. That's like all I want to do. And I remember as a kid asking, I wanted to do what the altar boys were doing, and I was told no because I was a girl. And I will never forget, that was like a monumental moment for me. Immediately felt like, I don't like this. Like, this doesn't feel right.
Was that like a shock to you to realize like girls weren't altar boys, or like
It was a shock
was that
to
because like
me.
you were so young and you didn't know that part yet, or you just
It was
kind
a shock to me. Like, it hurt my feelings because it was the first time I ever realized, like, in my mind, if I want to go there and I want to serve God, that should be a good thing, right? It never really dawned on me that it was always just boys. You don't think that abstractly as a kid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just see kids doing it and you're like, okay. So it was shocking to me. It made me sad for a really long time.
How did that not push you away from God? That sounds like I would be repelled.
I don't know. It just pushed me away from the men around. It was all the men around me that were telling me no. That, you know, it pushed me away from those people. And so
Gotcha.
the one thing I will credit my parents with, they made us go, but we went like textbook. You went every Sunday, but you didn't do any kind of praying or worshiping throughout the week. But they let me take part in anything I wanted. So like when youth group came around, I wanted to be part of youth group. That had nothing to do with our church. That was Youth for Christ. It was campus life. And so, yeah, no, I didn't even realize that when I interviewed with Chris. That's so funny. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I've been part of Youth for Christ before. And so they never told me no. They were not like, you have to be Catholic. That's just what my mom was raised in, so that's where we went. Or Greek Orthodox, we either went to one or the other, but mainly Catholic.
Is your family Greek?
Lebanese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Lebanese and Italian, but we favored the Lebanese because that's primarily who we were around, was the Lebanese side. And so, yeah, it didn't turn me away because I guess like she let me go explore other avenues of faith all the time. I'll never forget, I did not make my confirmation. I made my first communion. And all of my friends who came back to tell me how I was going to burn in hell. And the irony of that, and even then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then I'm like, wait, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, I quickly got over that, right? The irony of that is, and I'm going to Girls Weekend next month. My 10 girlfriends I grew up with, I love them all dearly. Most of them have faith, except for one has like none. It's so funny because not one of them takes part in their faith at all. And I always kind of like laugh about when I think of that memory about how I was the one. Not that I think they're going to burn in hell, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
because of that man-made rule, that
Right.
legalistic, like whatever, they were so happy to tell me I was going to burn in hell. And I'm like, it really is crazy when you realize what a relationship with Christ really means, right? It's not all those legalistic rules. Not
Yeah.
really. You know
So
what I
is
mean?
that when that clicked for you?
No, I still was pretty young. Maybe
Yeah.
we were like 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
So that was hurtful. It clicked for me. You know, you have all these aha moments as you get older where you're like, oh, you'll just be randomly thinking of something and then you remember something else and it clicks together.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's just one of those little fun things that reminds me of how not to be and how not to talk to people.
Yeah, you kind of
And-
learn from
yeah.
negative examples. You're
Yes.
like, I'm not going to be like
Yes,
that.
I'm not going to separate people into denominations. I'm not going to separate people into rules. And then the more I dove into the Bible and started to actually understand what being a Christian meant, because like I said, you know, I've always believed in Jesus Christ. I think Chris said it too. I didn't know what that meant. So when that finally clicked in and I got older and started kind of searching for churches and reading more of the Bible, it's funny because it doesn't take long in the Gospels for you to get to a point where Jesus is saying that exact same thing to the people standing in their robes for everybody to look at him and acting so holy. And he's
Yeah.
like, you have no idea what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Cleaning the outside of the cup when the inside of the cup is still filthy.
Yes, and when I got to that section, even though I knew it, it just gave me that complete peace about it. Like, okay, what I felt was like, okay and right, you know.
Okay, and just to clarify, you mentioned Chris a couple of times. Are you talking about Chris Lorenz?
Lorenz, yeah.
Okay, just always want to
He
clarify.
worded it
The guy we
really
had
well
here like a couple of weeks
From the
ago.
one, yeah, with that used to be with you, yeah.
I know. I think that's pretty cool. Like just learning from a lot of, maybe not necessarily cool. I mean, it's definitely probably hard. Like just a lot of bad examples. How does that make you feel coming from, like, because you mentioned like you have a bunch of family members who have like felonies or recovering from heroin, and you were like, I guess, one of the few that just didn't go through all that. I don't know. Like, what's that feeling like, just to see everyone else around you kind of in that mess? Did you doubt, like? Did you think like, okay, you were missing out on the fun, or did you think that?
No,
You didn't feel left out? Like,
I
wanna go
was
get a
one of
felony?
I'm like older than almost all of them,
Okay.
except my brother. And he's in that pool as well. And so no, because I was like their babysitter. I was more like, what is wrong with you? Not because I was like, I can't believe you're partying or whatever, but when you watch people deteriorate and you love their children and then you take their children all the time to be with your children because you know otherwise they're sitting at home by themselves when they're 7, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, it is hard. I was angry for a really long time, especially because I love every single one of them and I was so close to them. And then all of a sudden they were these narcissistic people that I didn't know anymore. And I had that mentality of, why don't you love your kids enough? 20 years later, I understand what addiction actually is and what it does to a person. And every one of them are amazing human beings, and they are full-on parenting now, and their kids have ended up, like my godson, for example, he's halfway through physical therapy school, and he's brilliant. And he walked into a needle in his his arm multiple times. And so
geez.
I just, and that is the grace of God.
Yeah.
I prayed a lot through that time. I also had to go to CODA meetings. A pastor of mine in Ohio, I did a ministry for adults with severe disabilities there, and he pulled me aside one day and he's like, I see you slowly getting more angry. Like people pull at you. There's no reciprocation. You don't have to say yes to everyone. And if out of fear that they're going to be mad at you, they don't care how you're feeling, that is called codependency. And even though behaviorally I could have taught that to a child, I couldn't recognize it in my own life. So he gave me a card and he's like, I went to CODA meetings for like a year in another town so no one would see me. Here's the card, go to this
What's a CODA
building.
meeting?
It is like AA for codependency.
Oh.
So
Is that something they have around here too, or is this just the Ohio thing? Because Ohio.
so what's funny is I feel like those kind of meetings are scattered. It just depends on the city. And so in Cleveland, there were a handful of options to go for that, which I didn't even know that was a thing that you could do. And basically, what does codependency meaning teach you? They teach you to be dependent on yourself, on a higher power, which for me was Christ, and then in addition to draw boundaries. And boundaries are my favorite thing. I love them. They have everything to do with friendship, right? Healthy friendships have boundaries,
How
right?
so? What's an example?
So, healthy friendships are the friends that respect your boundaries. They know who you are, they're secure in their relationship with you, and they love you enough to say, okay, I know this bothers you, so I'm not going to cross that threshold. There's a lot of phases of friendships. One of you said in the first episode, you wouldn't consider the people that you work with friends.
Right.
Do you remember which one of you said that?
That was me.
That was
It was
you. I wanted to ask you why. What would be your definition of like?
So I originally started,
Okay.
that thought came into mind when I was talking to an old coworker who I saw them more than my own family because every single day I'm working with you. And we're talking about friends or something like that. And I was like,
You're not my friend.
I said it in a loving way. I was like, can we consider each other friends? I'm like, I've never once hung out with you outside of the thing of work. So if there's no intentional meeting, there's no intentional getting to know you outside of where we're forced to be together. Like he doesn't know that side. Like it's a funny thing. Like when you see someone every day at work and you see them in their work clothes, and then one day you see them dressed normally, and you're like, "Oh, that's how you dress." It's like a funny thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It is weird.
I don't know you if I don't even know what you look like on a normal day, and so that was my mindset.
Okay. There was no judgment in that question. I was just
I don't feel
curious.
judged.
Yeah. Because in my mind, I have about 70 categories of friends. They're just all different levels.
Do you have names for all 70?
No.
That's too many things.
70 was a bit of an exaggeration, guys. Come on. No, but I do. I have like levels of friends, but I would consider all friends. We don't have, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be like, you need to have. I just was curious. And it seems like when you commune with someone, you consider that more of a friendship.
Yeah, I feel like
understand.
intentionality goes into it.
I do wonder if it's like male, female, because I could see more women saying what you just said. Like I have levels where guys are just like, you're either my buddy or you're not. Yeah, you know, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd
Maybe
say I
that's
have
part
like
of it.
a few, because I got like best friend, good friends. Yeah, they're friends, and then like acquaintances.
Yeah.
And then there's the people like, yeah, I say hi to them when I see them. That's it.
I don't remember who I was reading this from, but like I remember someone like mentioned like there are categories as friends, like kind of as you mentioned, where like you have your spiritual friends, you know, your religious friends, you have your mentor friends, your family friends, and you got like your drinking friends or your social friends, you know. So you have like different categories. Like you wouldn't really cross the boundaries between them, you know. Like with your mentor, you probably wouldn't go out drinking. With your, you know, like other like family friends, you may not share what you're more likely to share with your friend, like personal friends. So I thought it was pretty interesting, and I was like, yeah, I think there are somewhat categories.
And so when you're saying that, I relate to what you're saying. So I see mine as like my boundaries have different like measurements. So some people are on this side of that boundary, some are like closer, some are closer, and some are fully inside the boundary because they're allowed to be. But I guess in my mind, I still would categorize them all as friends. If they called on me in need, I would, if I was able to, I would go.
Right.
It doesn't mean we would hang out a lot, but I care enough about them to go. And so it's a tricky thing. There's a lot of levels to friendship in general.
So what makes them move from different boundaries? Like, is there a level of confidence? Is it their character, or is it just how you click, or is it like?
Tell us how you would define a boundary though, like
Define about.
before you, and then
yeah.
Okay.
like,
So
'cause people might be like listening. They're like, what are boundaries?
Yeah, because I don't know boundaries.
I actually
you know?
did a little thing at church about boundaries, and I had so many people come up to me and be like, "Oh, I never realized. How do I do it?" And I'm like, I didn't realize people did not know really what boundaries were. And I mean, you have boundaries in every relationship in life. At least you should if you
Right.
want to have healthy relationships, right? My problem was I wouldn't say no for fear of them being upset with me. Back in the day,
Codependent.
and I was codependent on that, them liking me or feeling like
Right.
I was helpful to them. But 100% of the time, if the one day I called on them, they were nowhere to be found, right? But then if I couldn't give them a ride or give them $10, then I was a horrible human being. What was so ironic about that is when I came back to that in terms of amends, they didn't even remember any of those times that I said no to them and upset them. But I would stew over it. So like boundaries for me, I'll give you an example. I recently set a boundary in my head at church last week because to me, friendships need reciprocity, no matter what. They're supposed to be reciprocal. And there may be times in your life where you're going through a fire and you need way more from them than you're going to give. And that is the beautiful thing about friendship, right? In fact, one of my favorite scriptures that I pulled out is about that, and I'll
you
get to
pulling
that.
a Bible in this podcast?
Yeah, lots of it.
all right.
I have lots of it. I have a couple books too I want to throw out there that I think are brilliant in terms of
Do it.
this as well.
Go for it.
So I'm behind a coffee bar. I'm a behavior specialist, so like people will sit down and just traditionally pour their problems out, right? So, and I don't mind. That's how I'm built. That is how God made me. And there are some, there's a woman that comes and sits and hangs out with, there's multiple, so I'm not like giving anybody away on this, that comes and sits. And when I start to realize that in the past year, I know every detail about your life and you don't know the name of my children, nor do you ask, I will put a boundary up there.
Right.
So here's what my boundary means for this person specifically. Do I love them? Yes. Do I care about them? Absolutely. If they needed me, truly were in need. I'm not talking about the everyday complaining, I'm a victim kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Truly in need, absolutely I would be there. Continue to pray for them. But if I walk in and my cup is not full and you start going off again about yourself, I will literally just walk away. I will say, sorry, my cup's not full. I have my own problems. And I'll walk away. I'm a little bit harsher now because I'm old. That is like Coda maybe pushed me in too far of a direction and I had to find a balance because it got really easy to be like, nope, don't feel like doing that. Don't like that. Don't talk to me that way. Like I got a little too far on that. So, I mean, boundaries they're actually really easy to set.
So, like for that one, we're called to love people. How do you lovingly put up a boundary? Like a lot of people would say, well, you're putting up this wall between us. Like, how can we have a relationship when you're just making such a firm
So
thing?
if somebody said that to me, I would tell them why. If she ever thought enough about me, I would tell her why, but she won't. It's about her right now. And that's probably a phase she's life that she's in, and that's okay. We've all gone through them, but I don't have to be affected by it. So if my cup is completely full, I will absolutely walk in and be like, hey, how's your day? What's going on? You look upset. I'm simply saying when my cup is not full, I'm not going to give you the rest of my energy because I always do anyways. And so it's not like I write them off. So should it ever come to that, I don't understand why communication is so, like people would rather just be angry behind the scenes than just walk up to somebody and say, or answer a question directly and be like, well, because you know nothing about my life and I know a lot about it yours, so that's hurtful to me. I don't feel like our friendship is reciprocated. And honestly, I've had to say that to somebody once, and that person was like, I had no idea I was doing that. I'm so sorry. And that person is actually one of my best friends today. Boundaries are pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You need them, is my
Yes.
point.
I think they're pretty good.
And Jesus wanted us to have boundaries in our friendships. That's part of accountability. He wasn't saying like, I feel like this gets so misconstrued. And you know, people around the world interpret the Bible in so many different ways. But if you think about it, the Bible begins with friendship right off the bat from Genesis 2. All through the middle. Proverbs is like loaded with wisdom on friendship, right? And then the very, very end, after the end of Revelation, what does Jesus do? He prepares a meal and he sits with his friends. So the entire Bible, really, like, we were built to commune together for friendship. And so how do you do it when we're so messed up from sin, though? Sin is what messes it up, right? Because somebody lies to you, you're hurt, you don't want to be their friend. You catch somebody doing something shady, you back up from them. Like, there are so many reasons that can break a friendship very quickly. And so it's kind of like this catch-22. How do we do it right? How do we do it the way Jesus wants us to do it?
We're reading like Ecclesiastes. Was it chapter 3 or 2 or talked
5.
about, or was it? Well,
Today?
Today was fine, but like earlier we talked about like where two are together, it increases. I remember a threefold. A three is not broken. A three cord is not broken easily. But like if you have a friend, there is more reward, and if one falls, the other can lift each other, pick each other up.
Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not completely broken.
She was right.
That one.
Yeah,
That one.
Clearly
It's
she reads the
Ecclesiastes
Bible.
4:12. 4:10's good too. Proverbs has got some good ones. It's referred to throughout the entire Bible. God walked with Adam and Eve. He spoke with them. He spent time with them. He hung out with them. And then even when they, turned to sin for a moment, and when you're turned to sin, there's no God in that. You've turned your back on God, whatever. He still tried to come back and reconcile with them. In fact, if you think about creation in general, he created everything on that first day. Like all the first things that he created, he didn't create a partner for a mountain. He didn't create a partner for anything else, really. He just created it, and it was good. It was only when he got to Adam where he said, I want you to have a companion.
It's not right for you to be alone.
Yeah, like we were built for companionship. The first 2 commandments, love me, love your neighbor. And so it's mimicked all through the Bible.
Which I think is so interesting because like when you think about the Trinity, like they're in relationship with each other. Like it's not like, God's just by himself floating and just wandering in space, but like there's was it you that was quoting how someone's talking about like a Trinity is like a dance between the 3, and like they're just in this dance in this relationship with each other, and this is before the foundations of the world, and so I just think I think that's why it's so important, because I think he thinks it's important, so obviously.
I mean, the Holy Spirit is referred to as a friend. David refers to God as a friend. Abraham was referred to as a friend of God. Like, there's just friend. It almost goes along with how many times love is mentioned in the Bible.
So how do you go about making or just finding people? Like, especially I feel like the older you get, you're out of high school, you're not seeing the same people all the time, maybe you move to a new place. I have a friend who is growing in her faith, and she's like, I'm really struggling to find friends and people that are like-minded. So how do you do that? Where do you go?
There's so many layers to this. I was thinking about this the other day. It's really hard because we live in a world where people like to identify themselves as one thing or another. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You're an extrovert, you're an introvert. I have social anxiety, this, that. It makes it hard to go out. I guess I'm lucky because I will walk into a room of 300 and be like, what up? I'm Chrissie. Like, I don't care. You know what I wasn't like that when I was younger necessarily as much, but I grew into that somehow. God wanted me to be that way in some way. So I just get involved in a lot of things. It's really hard to suggest that to somebody that you know will not put themselves out there.
Right.
So
It's
like, are you
something-
saying, how do you help someone? Like, how do you suggest to them to get them out there, or for you yourself?
Both.
For himself.
Or just in general?
Yeah, he meant for a friend, you know, like for a friend. For a
Asking
friend,
for
how do
a
you make a
friend.
friend?
I just need friends and.
I mean, I don't know what you do. What do you do?
I install cabinets. I do a lot of things.
And so that's
Josh has
not like
lots
a
of friends.
I do
situation
have
where you're
friends.
really surrounded by like an office full of people, or you know what I mean? So that doesn't pose probably a lot of opportunities for you. Not that we're talking about you, but I'm just as an example. So sometimes your job makes it hard when you're or if you work from home and you're not out and about. And are we speaking as a Christian or just in general?
I'd say,
Both.
can you do separate? Is it separate?
So if you are growing in your Christian faith as a Christian, you are called to go out, right? You are called to go out and be a fisher of man. That's not comfortable for everyone. I understand that, but that is actually what we're called to do. So that's something you have to reconcile with yourself if you struggle in that way. And I actually think for most people who truly struggle in that way, if they push themselves outside their boundaries and just prayed for strength through it, I think that a whole world would open up to them that would light them up.
Yeah.
They just don't know it. They don't know what they're missing in that way.
It's weird. It's something I'm always like dealing with in the church. It's like two people could like be like sitting next to each other on a Sunday morning or something, and the one person could come to me and say, "This is the most friendly, amazing, love-filled, best place on earth," and the person right next to him could come to me and say, "This is the most unfriendly, worst church ever," and I heard a pastor say once that he told his people, or new people, that he said something like, "This will be the friendliest, greatest church to you if you allow it to be, and it'll be the most unfriendly church ever if you just sit there," basically.
Yeah.
Because
And that
you
is
have
absolutely the
to
truth.
you have to
Yeah.
engage. You have to open yourself up a little bit, because I think the tendency is to just come and wait for people who are just like you, who you're going to mesh with perfectly, and that's not going to happen.
Well, you even wait for people to come to you.
Yeah.
But those people are just people who have their own stuff going on. Now, I can be so outgoing, and I don't like to walk into a room, especially in my church, since I know so many people now. I do not like to leave one stone unturned. But most people are not as crazy as I am when it comes to that. And
Yeah, we know. Trust
everybody,
me.
you know it all too. I know it, buddy. I noticed when I've ran a ministry and you have volunteers are like a revolving door, right? Because everybody comes into a church with their own intentions. And that's okay, because we're human beings. We are born flawed. We are born into sin. We are born with free will. I think society makes that even harder because we live in a very me-centered world, you know, and especially nowadays with all the technology, and people don't even really know how to build real friendships anymore. I noticed that with the kids. And so I've heard that story so many times. Like, I've seen people who are like, everybody here is cliquey and no one knows me. Actually, the person I was speaking of earlier when I said I drew a boundary, have literally heard this person say, "Yeah, I've been here for so many years," and these people will be like, "I've never seen you." And I'm like, "Well, I've been here." And I remember thinking to myself, do you just expect everyone to recognize you and walk up and introduce themselves? Where's your part in it, right? And so there's this very victim mentality. And it's ironic because Christ can free you from that, but you have to open yourself to allow it. Like you said, if you allow it. Allowing it means you have to take part in it. You know, oh, the pastor, I see him do this with this person and this person. The pastor has to tend to 700 people. So if you think that every single Sunday he can walk through and acknowledge 700 people every single time, it's not even realistic. And so we live in like a flawed society, but now we're so much more me inward that people are constantly looking at, well, how it affects me. And they're having a hard time stepping out of it and being part of that, hey, let me open my heart to it and become a part and explore different options at the church. And there's so many connect groups. They're on the walls of every church I walk in. Hey, this. But if you don't sign up to go and drive yourself there, you're not part of a connect group.
Yeah.
Right?
And so as you kind of share that, like, there's all these opportunities. And I think one of the most interesting things that, like, is so many people feel isolated, especially, like, you look at, like, standard statistics, especially for, like, Gen Z and all that. And it's like everyone's, like, hoping someone to reach out to them. And it's so funny because two people would sit by each other and they would hope someone would talk to them. And it's like, dude, just make that first little move.
Turn around and say, hey,
Just-
how's your day so far?
And the hard part is, like, that requires a little bit of vulnerability. That requires a little bit of just putting yourself out there to get rejected or to just look like a fool or an idiot. But, like, man, it kind of, like, just no one. This is kind of to advantage. Everyone thinks about themselves. So, like, if you think you look like an idiot, someone's gonna forget about it next week. Like, I know someone talks about, like, oh, what if I go to Walmart and everyone's looking at me because my haircut looks funny? It's like, you're at Walmart. Everyone there looks stupid.
Are we specifically talking about your haircut a couple months ago?
That's not shown to the audience. I had a hat on.
I
We
wish
should
so
add
bad
that
they would've
somehow if
seen
we
it.
can.
You
Scroll
guys
it.
got to see that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Can I tell you what an amazing moment in my life that was to watch him get half his head shaved?
I love that he did it.
And the fact that, like, I'm so sorry.
You remember that moment. I remember you
The fact that
mentioned
your
it.
head, like, she cut your head within the first 3 seconds. It just got worse. It spiraled downhill from that point on.
Yeah.
What was really mind-blowing was that a week later, you still had that haircut,
Oh,
even
he
though the
kept
bet
it.
was
Kept
over.
I kept it for almost a month.
Way too
long.
long.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I'll share a picture with the audience about it, but
I
Throw
think
it
that
at
it
me.
was very healing for you in some way. I think it was
Well, he
amazing.
got a girl's number because of this hair.
See?
It was dumb.
Did they? Well, I'm not.
it didn't work out, so
camera.
clearly, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, probably because I grew the hair and it's like, you're just not the person I remembered, you know?
She probably went home and was like, I met this poor dude. I'm going to go take coffee.
Well, if sympathy points works, right?
So something that I did going from high school into college, there was some people, I think from a college, came down and were talking to us, and we had to write down like goals, like a 5-year plan or something like that, and then what we wanted to do in college if that's where we're going. And I remember one of the things that I wanted to do for college was I'm naturally an introvert. Growing up, I was extremely shy. You said you go in a room with 300 people and you're like, what's up? I was like, back of the room, like,
Yeah.
I'll just
Quarter.
enjoy everyone. I like people watching, still do. I just see everybody else's interactions. I think it's fun. So anyways, but college is like the time to make something new of yourself. So I set on that thing. I wanted to meet 15 new people for the first year. And so I had that in my head. So it was like I had to do a lot of mental prep. But so because of that, I had that in my head during like meals and stuff. If I ever saw someone sitting alone, I would go and sit by them. And I met a ton of new people. But it took a lot of like, okay, let's do this. Like, you have to do
mental
it.
prep work.
You have to prep because if it was just like, I should be a new person. Hey, there's somebody over there. It's not happening. So that was something that really helped, and I have to continue to do that.
You forced yourself
Yeah.
to do. Do you feel like it got so much easier after you did it a few times? It got easier to do
Oh,
it
100%.
the next scenario.
And
yeah.
for some reason, so a kind of more funny recent thing, I was just on a cruise last week, and I'm a single guy, and so I was like, you're on a cruise. There's a lot of beautiful people there. And so I planned it out that I was going to ask this girl out, and I've asked out a few people without like knowing them, just like a blind thing. And I've been rejected both of the times. But afterwards, I was like so proud of myself because I was like, I talked to the pretty girl.
You should be proud of yourself. There's no reason why you shouldn't talk to girls.
And it was
in
just
general, I hope that didn't sound weird, but I'm being serious. Like,
He's gorgeous. Is that what you're saying?
and then I do think you're such an attractive guy, and so I like.
I mean, lose the Santa hat, but otherwise.
yeah, that's the thing that's holding me back, huh?
That's what people don't realize, and it makes me sad. And the only way you're gonna understand the change or get the reward from it is if you force yourself to do it. And I know that's not easy, but what are your options? Sit at home and get lonelier? and let years tick by, or push yourself outside of the box. And if you get rejected, we all do.
Which I think it's just the same thing with friends. Is I felt so encouraged by a rejection because I put myself in the opportunity to be rejected, I guess. And so it was the same thing with the friends. Like if you go, the worst they can say is no. And once you've gone through the no, you're like, well, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I can do that again.
It is
Yeah.
it is deep.
Same with
though,
friends.
Like for people, like it's a huge fear.
Huge.
It is.
It's a big deal to some people. I keep thinking of Tim Keller said, to be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. Like, love you, I love you, man. Whatever. Like it feels good, but it's superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear.
Right.
So you put yourself out there and you get rejected. That's what we fear. But to be fully known and truly loved, fully known, truly loved, is a lot like being loved by God. And that's the truth. But
That's why it's so important. It's like the one relationship you'll never be rejected if you
Yeah.
ask for it
Yeah.
and you want it. You know what I mean?
and that should be coming out of us too. Like no
Yes.
one should be rejected by us.
Yes.
You know?
And so I, at my age now and my experience, because I will tell you, I was that insecure. I thought I was the ugliest, most disgusting girl on the planet. I was single till I was 27. And so imagine what that's like in a crowd of people, like your peers, they've all had relationships, they've all had sex, not to be like overly whatever, but you guys
It's a
can
Christian
handle
We're
podcast.
you can
Chrissy,
handle it.
come
You're
on.
fine. But
God
still,
created
even
sex.
if God created sex, right? So like even if in my mind I was like, oh, but I still would like to wait till marriage, by the time year after year ticks by and everyone around you, including all your little cousins and everyone you know, has at least experienced relationship and you're the one who hasn't, how else are you? Of course, like I would look in a mirror and be like, you are the ugliest human being, clearly, in the world. Guys are never going to like you. Like whatever. I did pray through that. Sometimes I said terrible things to God through that process. I never stopped praying it, but I'm thinking like, I would have never walked up to a guy and asked him out. Never. Because I knew in my mind I was going to get rejected. Because why wouldn't I? I was hideous. Like, that's what my mind said. It's such an unrealistic thing even to think about, because if you think about the 7 billion people on the planet, why would we assume every single person would be attracted to us and say yes? It's like we can't handle one no. I love that you handle no. Handle no's. You're going to get a lot of them. How old are you?
24.
Oh, God, you're going to get so many no's in your life, right?
You got so many more to look forward to. You got so many
Yes.
more. Come on, keep
Welcome
it going.
those no's. They're a beautiful thing. That's what grows us. It's
narrowing
what
it down.
refines us. Yes. And then why would we want everyone to say yes if God has someone specific for you that he has prepared? You know what I missed out on? I missed out on all those trashy relationships and one-night stands. I'm not judging anybody for doing them. I actually wanted that back then because I'm like, anything would be better than still this. Like, now I've taught a couple years. Now I have my master's degree. When? Finally. God knew what he was doing. It was all about timing. Timing is hard because we as humans, we want things when we want them, you know, and that happens in every relationship, friendships, marriages, everything. And the reality of it is God's timing is always better in that. I love the fact that you pushed yourself outside of your box.
Thanks.
And you liked it. You survived.
Yeah.
You're
I
good.
didn't like love it, but
No, but you survived. Yeah.
You survived.
So we're relationships of any kind, whether that be you're going into a dating relationship or you're just trying to increase your friendships. There's a lot of people that I believe shouldn't know everything about you. There's a lot of people that you don't create depth with. How do you know who to invest in, and how do you know who is not worth it? I don't know a better way to put that.
No, you're absolutely right. I actually, when I was drawing my boundaries over here, you actually just summed all that up in what you just said. And so you're asking me how? How do I know what level to draw a boundary? And so can I plug a book real quick?
Please.
Okay, it's called,
It's going to be redacted anyways.
is it really?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Don't, it's such a good book.
It's just going to
Read
bleep
it.
every time. People are going to think you're
If you
swearing.
are a Christian and you want to know how to do it right, to
Is it
me, this book
boundaries?
is brilliant. It's called It's Blessed. It's the acronym BLESS, right?
Okay.
And it is by, I'm so sorry, I should know. It's two. I think they're brothers. It's Dave Ferguson and John Ferguson. Our church did it as like a Bible study. We had multiple groups all over the church that, maybe groups of 10, and we would meet until everyone in the church did it, like they bought it. And I remember thinking when I read it, and it is easier for me because I sat across kids who everybody else thought was unfavorable for 15 years and loved every single one of them because every single one of them was amazing and talented and hilarious. They were nothing like society had written them off to be. And so I had already had training, so it's unfair to assume other people are going to just see people that way. And I thank God for that training. I thank God that He gave me the ability through the children to be able to look at adults in that way. It's a little bit harder because adults, you want to shake them more. With kids, they're more excusable because their brains are still developing. But still, adults are just older kids, and their damage doesn't go away. Their trauma doesn't go away until they've dealt with it and walked through those fires, right? So this book to me was brilliant because it maps it out. So it's actually called, the title of the book is... Bless, 5 Everyday Ways to Love Your Neighbor and Change the World. And I believe this is how we do it. This is what I think Jesus wanted us to do. This is what Acts was all about. Paul going out, and it just was what it all was about. What was the first thing Jesus did when He finally got to that age where He's like, okay, now I'm going to go begin to fulfill what my Father wanted me to do? The very first thing He did
Turn
was
water to
round
wine.
up 12, before even that, he rounded up
You knew how to
12
crank it.
people. Right? Like, we'll do
Should I
an
say that on
intervention
the
the
Christian
next one.
podcast?
I still, every time I look at it, that's what I think of. It's so
Sam's.
funny. The first thing He did was round up 12 people, companions, to go with Him, and He called them friends, right? He knew He needed them. Life as a human is hard.
But He even had a layer in between when He had, like, wasn't it John, the brothers, and like Peter or something
John,
that were
James,
like
and Peter were the
the inner circle that He had.
And He had
closer,
layers,
yeah.
so He told them, like, those were His most trusted, but then He still loved the ones a little bit outer and outer. And so this book is brilliant because the concept behind it is to follow these basic steps. And here's what we see happen that drives me crazy in the church, through pastors, through leaders. We all know those people at church who don't really know anything about you, but they love to spout the Bible off to you, right? They love to, two sentences into meeting them, they love to like show you how great they are at memorizing scripture, but there's not a lot of depth, and they never actually take the time to get to know you. And I always want to be like, shut up. Don't talk less, listen more. And then this book came along, and I'm like, this is brilliant. So the B stands for begin with prayer. Right? So you begin to pray for this person. Like, I see this person alone all the time, or this person always comes into my work, or whatever. Like, Lord, help me see this person, whatever the prayer is, right? So you begin with prayer. The L stands for listen. And so building a relationship as a Christian should be much more listening, not talking about how much you know as a Christian, right? Yeah. I'm speaking to you indirectly.
I need to learn some of this stuff.
Just listen, right? And so, no, you don't give yourself enough credit. That drives me crazy.
You're pretty
because you are fantastic. Then the E stands for eat together. Why? Because when you commune with people and you sit and you eat with them, you build a relationship, right? The first S stands for serve. It is the very, very, very last piece of the puzzle, the very last S, that stands for share. Share your story, right?
So does it serve them or serve with them?
Serve with
what?
them, serve them, serve whatever way you can around them, right?
Okay.
Throughout this process, you'll absolutely figure out whether you need a boundary or not. It doesn't mean you won't care about them and understand them more. When you understand why people are how they are, it is much easier to love them. But we live in a society around Christians where people are, so many Christians around me are like, they drive me crazy. They just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Well, you could sit up on your ivory tower and watch people all day and judge them, but you don't actually know the depth of what they've carried for years. And when you do, it gets a lot easier to be forgiving and empathetic towards a person. Now, if their behavior...
I just want to hit on that. That is such a good point. Like, just learning about them gives you that, like, just more compassion or that understanding. Because, like, I think earlier you talked about it, and I didn't say anything then, but, like, you're talking about, like, your, interventionist for all these kids that people thought, like, I just don't want to deal with them, or like, hey, don't tell me about this
all
person.
the time, yeah.
And it's like, because they don't know that person, they just know that person is not listening, or that person is being a jerk, or that person is, like, being rowdy. And it's like, you have no idea why they think like that, or how they got to that, because they're probably going through something, or something has happened to them. And this is why I think, like, just learning their story connects you in a way that just gives you either understanding, like, if you're impatient with someone, just talk with them a little bit, and if you learn a little bit about them, I think that helps me honestly a lot with people when I start to see, like, that's why you act like that.
Yeah,
that's why you have a hard time with that.
You don't have to be able to, like, feel what they're feeling, but at least you have knowledge and can put some pieces together as to why they behave the way they behave.
Yeah.
Right? And so that, I mean, over and over again with those kids, I loved every single one of them. There was only one kid I ever had that innately just scared me, how they were built. Most human beings born clean slate, yes, we're born into sin, but most people are born with a need to just be loved. And so when you've lost that, which is the other book I was going to plug, but I won't. I've told you about 5 to Thrive before, right?
Yes.
Like when you are a child and you have no security, which is the bottom tier of need that you absolutely need, if you don't have that, you then do not create an identity. Or you do, but you do it in all the wrong ways. And then that identity becomes where you belong. And then you belong to the bad things that you're doing. And then that is your purpose, and it just repeats itself. You have to go all the way back down to that. That takes time for people. Everyone's capable, but you have to dig it back out, and you have to start from that bottom. That's what's beautiful about Jesus Christ, is because your ultimate security, if you had no one else in the world, you still have him. And I realize that I am so blessed with family and friends and kids, and there are people who are truly lonely, and that's hard to say to somebody who's lonely, because loneliness is like one of the worst places to be left in, right?
I think it's easier said than done, because
it's so much easier said
those
than
people
done.
in that position, it's really the worst possible thing for that person to say no when you talk to them,
Yeah.
And I think also people have so much reason to. I understand why people hate other people, or why people don't want to be around other people. I used to think people who love the animals but hate people were weird, but I'm realizing, like, I totally get it. People suck.
I know.
People really suck sometimes.
I know. And it's hard because you have to fight through that, because at the end of the day, as a Christian, every single soul matters to God. Even the people you cannot stand matter just as much as you do to God. And so if we're doing our job, if we're doing it right, we're going to build a relationship first before we open our mouth. If you are seeking out somebody who is lost because you're trying to get to that point where they're like, okay, I want Jesus, stop. You're doing it wrong. That's my opinion, right? We cannot change people. We do not have that power. We're not that cool. We're not that great. We cannot do Jesus' job. We can, however, show the love of Christ and plant seeds. God does the rest. So if you'll have friendships that you'll plant seeds and they'll just keep doing the same whatever, and you can't be involved in that because it will start to wear on you as well. But at least you can walk away and still be kind and friendly. And then if they ever asked you, you could just express those feelings to them. But God could take the seed you planted 10 years later. I've actually had a kid come to me, 10 years later on Facebook and been like, I didn't understand what you said then until now. And now it makes a difference. And they had done terrible things after they left for years after, We don't have the power to change people. We do absolutely have the power to love people and see their hearts. Who was the ultimate friend to sinners, right? You guys, friends of sinners, it was Jesus Christ, right? He didn't go out and pick all the cool people and the people wearing the fancy robes and the Pharisees and the people that were celebrities. He went and picked the unfavorable people because he was just so capable of seeing them for who they were. And that takes time. Besides, do you guys ever want to be told what to do by somebody who doesn't know you? If you walk up to me and you make a judgment on my life and you don't know me, I'm going to be like, get out of my face. You don't know me at all.
Tom Holland had a quote, and he was saying, he's like, if somebody has a problem with me, text me. Like, let me know what it is. And if you don't have my number to text me, then you don't get to have a problem with me.
You can't have a problem with me. Like, how is that possible?
That's real basic.
But if I know that you truly love me, we have spent time together, you know about me, that's when I might be like, hey, you seem really happy. What am I doing wrong? That might be a moment where God opens a door and you'll feel led to be like, hey, Chrissy, I really love you, but can I just tell you what I see over and over and over again? But because I trust you and I know you care about me, I'm going to listen. It may hurt my pride, but if you don't know me at all, I don't care what you want to speak into my life.
Yeah.
That's how every other human being on the earth is. I don't care who says they're not. Nobody wants you to speak into their life when you don't even know who they are. Right?
Yeah.
You have to have a relationship first. And Jesus knew that perfectly.
Can you say the bless one more time? Like, go through it real quick. What they
Yeah,
mean?
so the B stands for begin with prayer. The L, everybody wants to share their story with people, so that's why share is the last thing,
Right.
because you got to build that foundation first. So the B is begin with prayer. How do I become friends with this person? Should I become friends with this person? God, open the door if you want me to be friends with this person, right? The L is listen. Listen way more than you talk. Ask questions, but ask questions to find more information, share what it involves. But some people listen to like reciprocate with about themselves.
Right.
I'm even around leaders all the time that do that still too. And I'm like, oh, just listen to what the kid's saying. You know what I mean? The E stands for eat together. And that's just about spending, what do we all have to do? We all have to eat, right? So everybody has that in common. It's a great way to commune. And then the first S is for serve. Serve that person. You could serve together, though. I like that because sometimes sharing that with a friend is a really cool way to grow together. The very last S is share, and that is the share your testimony with them. Share what Christ does with you. But you can't do that till all the other things have happened first. Right. And I believe that hands down. That's why I thought this book was brilliant. I've watched that throughout my whole life, including starting from with the teenagers that I was with on a regular basis. So it doesn't mean that you have to be friends with people who do toxic things and do those along with them. It doesn't, We do have neuroplasticity in our brain. And so it's that whole like, which wolf do you feed? The wolf you feed the most is the one you're going to be, right? Our brain is constantly, the neurons are constantly making new connections. That's neuroplasticity. So if I am surrounding myself with people who are angry and negative and gossipy, I am going to actually biologically become more like that.
Right.
Vice versa. If I choose to surround myself with other like-minded Christians who want to like love people, make a difference, but stay grounded in Scripture and Christ and who we are supposed to be, then that's the part of my brain that's going to grow. So it's not a ticket to like go walk into destruction and just be friends with everybody in chaos. But I do think we are supposed to try. And then we evaluate as we go through. Some people will look at you and be like, hey, I know we're friends, but I don't want to hear anything you have to say. I don't want to change. And those are the people that you have to say, well, I love you, but I'm not going to participate in any of it with you. And that's okay. Like,
That's a boundary.
That's a boundary.
Oh, there we go.
That's a
You're
boundary.
learning. He's doing listening.
Nicely done.
Doing the listening.
He's doing the listening. He knows.
I'm doing a lot of talking. And I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. As we just with us closing, I mean, I feel like there's so many like awesome scriptures. I think the thing is the moment just to kind of share like just some verses maybe you guys thought about or like how Jesus is our friend. Because like we talk so much about with other people, but like I think the best friend is Jesus. Like, you talked about like being rejected by people and like, yeah, but the one verse that comes to my mind, and I can't remember the exact one, but I know it's like in John 10 where it says like, all who come to me, I will by no means cast out. And I love that. It's like, by no means will I cast out. Like you, and I know it's talking for salvation, but also just that he accepts us. Like, if you're ever coming to him, this is the only person who will not freak out, by you approaching. And even what's more awesome is this is the one person that you can kind of share or unravel the ugliness in you, and he's not gonna freak out like other people. Some of us
Yeah.
some of us might share things too quick, like, hey, I'm Andrew, and
When
like
he
I have
already knew.
and like I'm a drug addict, but hey, my name's Andrew. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, some people would freak out right away if you introduce yourself like that. So
You see, think of the woman at the well. She was like blown away that he knew everything about her. He already knew. You were allowed to belong before you believed in Jesus' eyes. You belonged before you believed, right? And everybody wants to feel like they belong, right? And Jesus was the ultimate outcast, wasn't he? I mean, the day he was born, there was a king out to kill him.
Right.
Right? So, like, he was being chased down and persecuted from the time he was born, really, by half the world that existed at the point in time, So, he's the ultimate outcast. So, yeah, I mean, I have, like, a couple scripture I would love to throw out. Do you guys have some? You
Throw one or two out.
You go
I'll
first. I've talked a lot.
I've just got one. It was 2 Timothy 2:22 is so flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. So it's like, go for these things with people that are doing the same thing, like to team up and go for it together. That's it.
dang,
No,
you
that's
memorized that. That's a gift.
That was my recent.
Bible verse of the day.
No, I was trying to do it. It's taken me a couple weeks to do it, but that was my challenge. So.
You know what's so funny is my insecure mind was like, wow, he memorized that, but I didn't memorize these. So now
Yeah, you got a bunch of-
No, mine was a couple weeks. So
He was practicing. He was just
Why
standing in
does
the
it make you
mirror.
look bad?
yeah, I wrote it on a sticky note. I read it a
You
lot.
just kept repeating it over and over again, which we should do, and I'm terrible at. So I just have a lot of these papers around my house. And
You'll probably have more verses than me.
So there's just so many you can pull out any. So I'll give you a couple from Proverbs. Proverbs 17:7 is actually probably my favorite. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. And the adversity, I think, is the key part of that scripture, because what happens, I see so many Christians around me. I try to be friends with them, but they're just too hard, or they won't listen, or whatever. And I'm thinking, what do you want them to, like, what are you trying even to get them to listen to? Just be their friend. Like, why are you trying to fix them? There are so many times I want to shake people and be like, why do you think you have the power you don't actually have? Just loving somebody does not mean trying to change them. Every relationship has adversity. Marriage is so hard. Like, honestly, friendships
crush
are
my
so
hope.
hard. Sorry. No, it is, though, but that's what ends up making it so beautiful in the end, because you grow together, you fight together, you work through things together, and then you're stronger.
Okay.
Right? When you see people calling out at a wedding, if you've been married 40 years, stay on there. If you've been married 50 years, you see that old couple that's been married 60 years, I guarantee you, if you ask them, they have hated each other 1,000 times. Maybe there was even infidelity. Maybe there was, you would be blown away at some things old people will tell you that have withstood the test of time. But friendships are the same thing. You have to fight through them. There's adversity. But it doesn't mean just because somebody gets annoying or is not living the way you think they should live, you just bail. You know?
By
My
the way-
grandparents are at 60 years, and we just did that for my sister's wedding 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's like
Nice.
kind of beautiful to see. So you
was
just
cool.
saw
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, I want to shout out to my friend Larry, because when he read me this verse, I loved it, and he talks about that friend. You can capitalize the F, and you can understand who it's talking about. If you were to capitalize a friend loves at all times, because then you would know that's Jesus Christ. 'Cause he personifies that.
At all times. It didn't mean it does.
Shout out to
Doesn't
Larry,
mean he
by the
didn't
way.
make. He held people accountable still, but he loved them at all times. Yeah, and so no, it's not easy because we're not like Jesus. We suck compared to Jesus, but we can try. We can try, and then maybe you won't hate people so much, or at least not more than dogs. I don't know.
A lot of prayer.
A lot
A lot
of
of
prayer.
prayer. You
A
need
lot
that.
of begin with prayer.
Some people require more
lot.
prayer.
Yes. And here's the thing, sometimes our cups just aren't full. And if your cup is not full, your most important task at that point is to spend time with God by yourself.
Right.
Right? I used to think the more I served, the more worthy I was. I realize now if I never served again but spent quality time with God, he'd be perfectly happy with it.
like
That's
we could
good.
keep going for a long time.
Yeah, I know. This can keep going, but I think
Yeah,
we gotta wrap
I'll
this
shut
up.
up
And so, thank you so much, Chrissy, for
Yeah,
joining
thank
us
you.
Yeah,
today.
thank you for having me
It was
on.
fun.
Yeah, it was cool. It was just cool. I know you wanted to talk about like friends, and I was like, oh, you already talked
Yeah,
about
I
it. But
appreciate it.
It's
And I'm
cool.
sorry I talk so much.
No,
Well,
it's
then
good.
it would be a very
That's why
short
we wanted
podcast
you
if you
here.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd
So-
just be 20 minutes, and we'd be like friends. Yeah, like guys don't talk much about friends.
Have them or
Just
don't.
Have them or
That's
don't.
Yeah, friends are cool.
What else we
Sometimes
gotta say? Not too much, you know. We
Yeah.
just, yeah, we're not very talkative on that. But no, thank you. It's such an honor having you.
Thank you.
Any advice you would give as far as someone out there, Christian or not, just what's the best way to maybe connect with a friend, or what would you say?
I was gonna say be a friend of sinners. Just kidding. That was so cheesy.
No, that was great.
I
loved
wanted
it.
to say it so bad. But really,
Can we add
just
the
try to
drum,
be friends.
like the little sound effect?
Right.
Oh, okay, no, we're not. Okay, sorry, we're on budget cuts.
I mean, just take a little bit of time. Honestly, pray about it. Pray about how you're going to figure out for you how to do that. You know, and you have a lot pulling at you as a pastor. I know that. And it's hard because everybody wants, like, oh, they want to fix that. So you have it's different for you. I can say that in all honesty, it is different for a pastor. You have to have a lot more boundaries. So, you know, I just think everything starts with prayer. And I think that if you are open to hearing, he'll let you know what you're supposed to do, you know, and take chances. I love that. Keep doing that.
Okay.
Keep doing it, Josh. We believe in you.
Chances.
Just think about it. 1,000 more no's, and you'll finally get your yes.
If I had a number like that, man, dude, going.
You probably would.
Hey, random citizen.
This is why the podcast. You got to get 100 more no's. Just say it out here. You know, our dozens of viewers and be like, no, to the screen, or to their Spotify.
I love that.
All right. Well,
You shave your head again. That's all.
That's it.
We'll have to
That's all it
consider
takes.
that. I do need a haircut. It's kind of growing out wild.
I know some people.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for just tuning in. Hopefully this has been pretty fruitful and just kind of, you know, hearing us talk about friendship and just ultimately the OG friend, you know, Jesus. I don't know, just as far as he's the only one who will never by no means cast us out. He's the only one who will always accept us. So thank you guys. Enjoy your day and stay in track for next
Thank you.
episode.